Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome. And good morning, everybody, and welcome to the campus of Central Washington University. My name is Nick Zentner. Thank you for tuning in. The local time is Saturday morning, 7:52 a.m. Pacific Time, and today's date is November 8th of 2025. Up and at 'em. We have approaching 260 live viewers, and folks will continue to stream in. If you're watching this in replay, of course, thank you for watching. That's most of you watching in replay after the fact, not live. And you can skip ahead about 9 minutes, something like that, to get to the beginning of this episode number 2, or episode B in this Alaska A to Z series. Come on, man. Pardon me. I haven't done a lot of speaking out loud yet. I need to remember to do that. We're all trying to get back in the saddle here. This is our first Saturday morning of many Saturday mornings this winter. Where are you viewing from this morning? Can I say hi to a number of you watching live? Elaine is in Tucson, Arizona. Springfield, Oregon. Butteville, Oregon. Deming, New Mexico. Good morning, everybody. Atop the Rattlesnake Tuff. I think that's also in Oregon. Las Vegas, Nevada. Lottie the Roddy. There's backcountry Gary Paul and Tom from Maple Valley. Tri-Cities, Washington. Lots of local folks here so far. Here we go. Now we got to Allo from Quebec. And, oh, Lord, okay, picking up now, too fast. Kamloops, BC. Courtemanche, France. That's Regine. Hello. Elko, Nevada. Yeah, I was hoping we'd get a bunch of folks from the old country, the European continent, our regulars tuning in live. It's a better time for you here on Saturday afternoon for many of you over there across the pond. Garrett, the Dutch night owl from the Netherlands. Hello, Garrett. Kodiak Island, that's Glenn. Thank you for getting up early this morning, Glenn. Shot of adrenaline, seeing all of you here now. Winona, Washington. Another Kamloops, BC. Ellensburg, Washington. Heard of it. Robert Hildebrand. Set his alarm, everybody. Good morning, Bob. Ben from the Netherlands. Kansas City, Missouri. Hayward, Wisconsin. Charles, that's 2 in a row. Do you know my in-laws? No. Do you know my aunt, Sharon Walker? She lives in Hayward, at least part-time. Essex, UK. Indianola, Iowa. That's Ashley. Kirk from Philomath. These are the Kamloops Magmas here. Thank you, Kirk. Rancho Cucamonga, California. Tinley Park, Illinois. Northern Virginia. It's a beautiful morning. It's 32 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 0 degrees Celsius, I believe. Here in Ellensburg, Washington. Give me a shot out the window. Yeah. A beautiful, beautiful morning. We've had rain. It feels like rare for us. I guess not this time of year, but we've had rain steadily for feels like the whole week. And we barely got our last field trips in for Geology 101 Lab this past week. The grad students that I supervise, Eddie and Sam D., have done an outstanding job. So it can start snowing all it wants to here. We've got our field trips in the can, at least for Geology 101 here on campus. We are in the hard part of the fall quarter for our students. People are starting to fall apart a little bit. Midterms, the second round of midterms was last week. People needing advising for winter quarter and so on. So I've had enough time to get us ready for this morning, but just barely. So I'll have a little bit more time this upcoming week. There's a Veterans Day holiday on Tuesday and so on. Okay, a couple more things before I take my walk. The lighting looks better. Thank you. Yeah, Nat the Wonder Boy last night was texting from his house. Was that just last night? He's like, check this, check that, on and on and on. So yes, we're not quite as yellow, at least now. But I noticed in the last episode, episode A, it looked pretty good like this. And then I took my walk and I came back in and it looked blown out and yellow. But again, that's probably because it was dark outside. We'll continue to tweak all these new tricks. We're tweaking the new tricks as well. And I won't see Nat till next week. I miss him so much. Don in Fairbanks, Alaska. Could we have a weather report, please, this morning, Don from Fairbanks? And yes, I'm hoping that more and more Alaskans and British Columbians are tuning in. And word travels about what we're doing. There's going to be, like, you're not even starting in Alaska. Why would we spread the word? Well, I understand what you're saying, but eventually it'd be really fun to get a bumper crop of folks from up north all in the middle of the night, basically up there, dark, around the clock. Google Earth by Glenn. Glenn, I did not take your file yet, so I'm scrambling these days, Glenn. In fact, I just went through a box 5 minutes ago and found a couple of things. That's why I was late. Kim is in Sydney, Australia. Kim, what time is it there? Was expecting to see some Australians on Thursday afternoon shows, but not Saturday mornings. Okay, I need to start concentrating. I got just a couple minutes, right? Okay, thank you for tuning in today. Live viewers, we are approaching 500 live viewers, and we will begin the program in just a couple minutes. Thank you. Yeah, we'll give you a shelf cam today. How about that? Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Do I even need to take a walk? I guess I do. Calm down. I got my keys. A pleasant good morning to you all, and welcome to episode B of Alaska A to Z. My name's Nick, and we are in the middle of an Alaska class. We're not in the middle. We just got started, but it has begun. And if this is episode B, that means there was an episode A couple days ago. And that's true. This winter, here with Alaska A to Z, we're going Thursday afternoons at 3 p.m. Pacific time and Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. Pacific time. It just works best for my schedule. I understand it's not convenient for some of you, but hey man, it's never gonna work for everybody, right? So you can watch these in replay, but I strongly encourage you, you're a grown-up, you can do what you want, but I strongly encourage you to think about watching these in order. If you think of this as a class, this is the second day. And were you here for the first day? You know, I've been teaching for 35 years, and consistently over the last 35 years, there'll be a kid that shows up on the third day, let's say, and they come up after class and they're like, yeah, I missed the first 2 days. Did we do anything important? And I'll say something, you know, like, nah, we were just, standing around. He's like, oh, cool. Like, of course it's important. What are you talking about? But, so if you missed episode A 2 days ago, if you're watching this live or replay, maybe you stop watching this one and go back and watch A first. I'm going to assume that you've seen these in order. So, no, there we go. If you just want to bop in every once in a while without watching them in order and just, have a nice break to your day, then that's fine too. Okay, great. So previously in the Alaska A to Z series, what did we do? In other words, what did we do in episode A? I did a slideshow. And if you missed the purpose of the slideshow, or let me remind you of the purpose of my slideshow, it was basically to try to explain my thinking about why I did not want to start in Alaska. Even though Alaska's big, even though it's complicated, even though it's overwhelming, I don't want to start up there. And I was thinking this morning at home, eating breakfast with Bijou the cat, I thought of an idea that might help explain my thinking. So the slideshow was hoping to do that, but here's another way to explain why I personally don't want to go to Alaska right away with a bunch of detail. We'll see if it works. I don't know. It's like half-baked idea, but let's try. So let's say you meet me in the hallway out here and you give me something in your hand. It's a little trinket. It's like a surprise almost. And I'm like, oh, thank you. And you're like, well, what do you think? And I'm like, oh, that's so nice. Oh, it's a little tchotchke thing, little trinket. It's got all sorts of little detail with it. Thank you. You must have made this? And you're like, no, I didn't make it. I bought it at the dollar store. It's like, okay, thank you. Well, this is really nice. And then somebody coming down the hall will stop and they're like, oh, I have one of those. And it's got yellow and blue and it's got little plastic edges and there's a little. So we're talking about this little trinket, and the dirty little secret is I don't care. I'm faking it. My mom taught me correctly, I think. I'm supposed to be nice. I don't give a shit about this little plasticky thing from the dollar store that you gave me. It was a nice gesture, but I'm confused why you gave it to me. I'm not really interested in all the details of this little trinket. So, am I just faking it all the time with everything in life? No. And even in that instance of you giving me a little trinket, I can get more excited about the trinket. And here's where I am vulnerable in telling you something that probably makes me look pretty bad. I can get excited about the trinket if I have a bunch of buckets. I'm cracking myself up. It sounds so dumb to say out loud. If I have a bunch of buckets on the floor, I got 5 buckets on the floor, and now you give me the trinket, and I have something to do with the trinket. I've got 5 buckets, and I'm trying to decide what bucket to put the little trinket in, the little tchotchke. And you're like, what the hell are you talking about? I don't want to go to Alaska and go up on top of some ridge somewhere and start banging away on some argillicious whatever, and it's Cenomanian ammonite porphyroblastic, whatever the hell, all these details, I'm not ready for the details. I'm going to fake it. I don't care. I've got no context. And if the Alaska scene is just millions of little trinkets, millions of little details, I'm going to fake it. I'm not going to be interested. It doesn't have any meaning to me. I don't even know where the hell I am. And so it's bucket season, everybody. I'm trying to make some buckets for this series. And you're like, wow, I really don't get what's going on here. Well, what if we have a bucket of eastward subduction and a bucket of westward subduction and a bucket of arc magmas and a bucket of post-collisional slab failure magmas and a bucket of Wrangellia composite terrain and a bucket of Siletzia and a bucket of, and a bucket of Bob Hildebrand and a bucket of Basil Tikoff and a bucket of Karin Sigel. So that's another way of trying to explain. I don't want to go straight to Alaska because it'll just be a bunch of mind-numbing detail, at least for the way that my head works. And I want to approach I want to get to the details. Don't get me wrong. I want to go to Alaska and I want to go deep. I want all the trinkets. Load me up. Give me buckets full of trinkets. Give me dump truck loads of trinkets. But if I've got the buckets, I'm going to wear out my shoulders. Trinkets, bump, 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 bump. That's the method of the madness. And for those that have watched many of these A to Z series, I've been doing that. We never did get to the Cascade volcanic arc last year, younger than 3 million years. It was bucket season. Okay, so that's the idea. So what is this episode, and what are we doing in this episode? We're going to look at another slideshow. Oh, really? I put together another slideshow? No, we're going to look at somebody else's slideshow. A slideshow that was created for us specifically. So if you've been to the Alaska Video Library, you've seen other slideshows, and many of those slideshows are simply talks that were given at professional meetings. And I got permission to obtain some of those professional talks and post them on my YouTube channel. And obviously they're talking to other geologists. 2 slideshows so far in the Alaska Video Library were done specifically for us. And I asked the authors of those slideshows to stay just as detailed as they normally would. I don't want it watered down. But in those 2 cases, I asked politely, can you make a slideshow that would go with one of your papers, a relatively new paper? So who's done it so far? Basil Tikoff made a custom slideshow at home. You can hear his teenager screwing around in the back, and Basil just kept it, and tied to his new hit-and-run paper with Bernie Hausen. And then just a few days ago, Robert S. Hildebrand made a slideshow for this community to go along with his brand new 2025 paper. Last introductory comment, and we're going to go right to the slideshow. Okay? You remember in episode A, where we didn't do anything important, I'm firmly committed this winter to staying on task and having these be 1 hour long. And then we'll do some live Q&A, and we'll screw around a little bit after the top of the hour. But it's already 10 minutes after 8, and I'll be cutting myself off at 9 o'clock. How long will it take us to get through Bob's slideshow? Probably longer than 9, but I'll cut myself off, and we'll just continue in the next episode. Okay? So I've already explained my thinking about that as well. Looks like we're 5 by 5 and ready to go, and I'm happy that you're all here. We have now approaching 700 live viewers. He goes to the second monitor, and I posted a second paper for Bob Hildebrand that has a bunch of juicy Alaskan stuff in it, but let's not do that now. We'll wait till after. Oh, come on, settle down. You can do this. Come on, concentrate on what you're doing. Okay, Bob Hildebrand is in the live chat. Bob Hildebrand will be with us. And, okay. I love experimenting. So Bob says, I'll probably set my alarm and be with you. He is. Bob says, if you want me somehow to participate, I'd be happy to do it. And I'm like, okay, Bob, well, let's try something. As I go through your slideshow, if you want stuff that you want to add, how about you text me? And then at the end of the hour, or I don't know, halfway through the hour, I'll check my texts and I'll read a bunch of the text to everybody. So maybe Bob will be chiming in the live chat. That'd be fine. But maybe he will also want to text me a little bit, and I'll just open it in front of everybody, and hopefully we'll see if it works. Okay, so we are devoting the month. I hereby declare that we have 6 letters in November. 6 letters in November. We're going to take a week off for Thanksgiving here in the States. All 6 letters are going to be Hildebrand. Okay? Okay. I've already explained why. We haven't started Bob's slideshow yet. I'm reminding you that this is the new paper where all the excitement is, from my point of view, and hopefully many of yours as well. The enigmatic Tintina Rocky Mountain Trench Fault, a hidden solution to the Baja BC controversy? Question mark? Robert S. Hildebrand. And as we touched on last time, Bob has laid out a, in my opinion, rather strong case to take all sorts of bedrock geology older than 50 million years old in British Columbia and matching it with bedrock geology down here in Mexico. And therefore, if we do that, we need to have a major amount of offset. So basically, the British Columbia bedrock geology is in the wrong place. It belongs way down here in Mexico. That's ultimately the Baja BC story. And so these are 10-year-old cartoons, and even older in some cases, from Hildebrand. And we've already seen them briefly. Let's not belabor it. We're going to get to Bob talking directly to us with the slideshow that he put together and recorded at home just a few days ago. We will keep coming back to this map, but maybe I can comment briefly. Should I do it now? I guess I will. So maybe I can comment briefly before we hear from Bob directly. The title that I chose for today is Look East. Look East. And if we're looking for a major fault to move a bunch of bedrock north, that fault needs to be further east than we've been looking as a community in the last 50 years. Bob and a few other key people that we're going to talk about briefly today have gotten us to look further east than anybody has ever thought before. That's the key to get us into this. You're like, I don't know what you're talking about. Well, we're going to be looking over here at the Tintina Fault. This is the Tintina Fault, way further east than where people had been looking earlier for Baja BC type structures. And you're like, I'm already lost. I don't know what's going on. Well, come on, man. This is episode B, and let's hear from Bob directly. I broke this slideshow into individual little segments.
One of the great linear valleys of the world occurs in the North American Cordillera, where it extends over 3,000 kilometers from Alaska to Montana. Many workers believe that the northern sector contains the Tintina Fault with over 400 kilometers of right lateral displacement, whereas the central and southern sector, collectively called the Rocky Mountain Trench, contains dominantly normal faults. Thus, the origin and significance of this valley are enigmatic. And here I hope to summarize part of my recent paper, where I suggested that the trench is the locus of a strike-slip fault with about 1,300 kilometers of dectral displacement.
Okay, I'm going to take the liberty to comment every once in a while. Hope that doesn't throw you off. This is the Tintina, and I'm talking out of school now. I don't know every Alaskan and British Columbian geologist, obviously. I hardly know anybody. But I think it's conventional wisdom that there's major strike-slip motion on the Tintina. But pretty much everybody except Bob and maybe a couple of other key people think that the Rocky Mountain Trench is not a major strike slip fault. Bob is essentially saying, yes, I think it is. I think it is. And I think this Rocky Mountain Trench has accommodated 1,300 kilometers of motion to the north. And you're like, where the hell are we? I can't even get myself oriented or orientated. I love that. Actually, I don't. Here's Ellensburg way over here. Okay, this is Washington, Vancouver Island, British Columbia, and heading up towards Alaska. Here's Haida-Gwaii. You're like, why did he put it sideways? I can't even figure out where I am. Well, this is a major piece of real estate that you just can't easily get on a north-south looking map, okay? So Rocky Mountain Trench, Sky Cooley's house down here at Flathead Lake, Montana, up through the Rocky Mountain Trench. I only know Golden, British Columbia as one example. Okay, all right, come on, hang on, Bob. Let's go to Zoom. Uh-oh. No, let's go to Earth. Okay. He goes to the iPad. Why not? Let's try this. So if we zoom in at Sky Cooley's house in western Montana, and it's such a beautiful day, I'm sure Sky's out on his motorcycle this morning. Come on, don't screw this up. Okay, here's Flathead Lake. Oh boy. Oh, stop rotating. So this is the southernmost portion of the Rocky Mountain Trench. And can I do this? Can we fly north? Here, we're in the Rocky Mountain Trench, Fairmount Hot Springs. Bob Hildebrand says there's a major fault underneath this valley. This valley that you can see from space, Golden, British Columbia. We're in the Rocky Mountain Trench, which is the southernmost extent of the Tintina. Look at this thing. Look at this gutter. The gutter that was producing a bunch of subglacial flow for Jerome Lessman a couple winters ago. Look at this. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. So I'm going to be adding a little bit to Bob's commentary, but he's basically saying, look, everybody told me this was just a bunch of normal faults in the Rocky Mountain Trench, and that's true. But deeper and more significantly, I think there's also a major Baja BC fault. Okay, now I lose the geography up here, so I don't even know where the hell I am. Is it way over here now? That's got to be it, isn't it? Look at this. Okay, you're looking at a rookie. I don't even know where the hell I am. Okay, that was good. Tried it, first try. Smooth. Very good. Back to the story. Okay, Bob, you got to be patient with me. I've added some Baja BC stuff to rope us in to the paleomagnetic people, because the next few segments of Bob's slideshow are going to talk about paleomagnetism very quickly and very densely. There's a lot of trinkets in Bob Hildebrand speak. It's all detail. We got to know what to do with the detail. We got to fight through the detail. So this is more tied to the first episode, where we're just trying to think about Baja BC and remind ourselves of this. And if you're brand new to us, welcome. And here's a very quick introduction to a couple of the concepts. Baja BC was first coined by this gentleman, Canadian paleomagnetic expert Ted Irving. And Ted spent his life doing paleomagnetic work, and had key people working for him with a lab based out of Victoria, British Columbia. If you're brand new to Baja BC, here's the idea. The idea is that we have a major fault someplace in the American West, and through time, we are moving major pieces of Mexican crust north on these structures, maybe one major structure, and they are now up in British Columbia, Yukon, and yes, you guessed it, Alaska. So Ted Irving is a major part of this. Ted passed away before I got seriously interested in Baja BC, so I didn't get a chance to visit with him at all. I did, however, get a chance to visit with Merle Beck, who is a colleague just across the water in Bellingham, Washington. Merle Beck, Western Washington University, started there in the late 1960s. And I did get interested in Baja BC primarily because Mount Stewart is just north of my campus, and I took some time to go up and start visiting with Merle. This is the first time I ever met Merle Beck. He didn't know who I was. I was just starting a public television series called Nick on the Rocks, and this is the first episode. And Chris Smart and I went up there to interview Merle. We got, 4 hours worth of content, and he ended up with like 32 seconds on the episode. I felt so terrible about that. But he was a natural, and I was so impressed with him, just personally. And he just lit up on camera as well. Not everybody does that. So Merle Beck and Mount Stewart go hand in hand in many of our minds. Merle also a paleomagnetic person. They still had the cores from sampling back in the late 1960s, and this is the study of the paleomagnetic signature of Mount Stewart in central Washington that started this whole Baja BC discussion, this whole idea. And so during the summer of the pandemic, I had just finished 75 of those backyard things. I'd built an audience on YouTube, as we talked about last time, and I started saying, well, I'm just going to go up and start interviewing folks. And I'm so glad that I spent a day driving 3 hours up to Bellingham, meeting Merle in his backyard. He was still living at home at the time. His wife passed away a decade earlier. And I had my mask on and everything. He's like, "Oh no, keep your mask off. Let's just sit in the backyard, and I got some beers on ice, and we'll just have a little chat." And I put a timestamp on here. I'm going to try this. Bob, be patient. How do I get out of this? Come on. How do I get out of this? Escape? Yeah. What did I say? 11:41. Let's try this. If I go to the Alaska Video Library, oh no, wrong one. Alaska Video Library. And I find the interview with Merle Beck in 2020 that we're just talking about, and I cue it up to 11:41. I think you're going to be able to hear audio. Let's just get a little 2-minute clip from this.
Very nice and an intelligent woman named Linda Lawrence, who later married and became Nosen.
Okay.
And Linda and I worked on my God, what granitic rocks are there around here better than the Mount Stewart batholith? You can drive right through parts of it. You can go up Icicle Creek.
Yeah.
And so we went up there and we sampled in 8, 9, 10 places and drilled standard paleomagnetic sites, 6, 8, 10 cores per site, and brought them down here. And she worked in my new lab, and she got a beautiful direction. And lo and behold, it looked like these rocks had moved north with respect to North America and rotated clockwise. And I said, my God, that's what Tessera and I found. At that point, I started thinking there was something really seriously going on here. This kind of application of paleomagnetism to tectonics was pretty much unheard of. It was ignored by most geologists, but I think the paleomagnetic community took notice.
Now, a decade earlier, the paleomagnetic stuff of Vine and Matthews was celebrated. All right, get off of that. Get off. There was some acceptance of paleomag, but yet this was somehow different?
It was quite different in that. Okay,
so I just wanted you to meet Merle if you hadn't before, and that whole interview waits for you in the Alaska Video Library. Good. That was 2020. This is the paper that the shit hit the fan, as Merle said. 1976. And most geologists who read this paper, first of all, they read it. Second of all, they hated it. And Merle Beck was basically badgered the rest of his career and never did totally get acceptance by the geological community. There's been progress since, but it was ugly by all accounts, including Merle just leaving North America and started doing work in South America just because he got tired of dealing with these folks. Linda Nosen, I did track down when I did the Baja BC Alphabet series 3 years ago, and and that was good. It was nice to get her on camera. This was the Beck and Nosen paper in 1972 that started this whole thing. But I tried to get Merle Beck on. And Merle was emailing me a fair amount back then and was super supportive and kind. And he just didn't feel like he could handle the technology. And we tried to get Russ Burmester to be his AV guy, and all Merle had to do was just sit in front of his computer, or his daughter. And we tried all sorts of things. He just couldn't quite get there. He almost did, but he couldn't quite get comfortable enough, and just felt like it was just going to be too much for him. And so it never did happen. So so we had Linda sitting in for Merle, essentially, during the first episode of Baja BC A to Z. Well, 2 years later, I visited Merle again, and he'd taken a fall, and so then he was in an assisted living place in Bellingham, and we met in August of 2022, and that interview is also waiting for you. He had lost his spark a little bit, but was still enjoyable to talk to, and I learned a fair amount from him, but things were not great at the time, physically, for Merle in his late 80s. And so a few months later, I started the Baja BC series, A to Z. There's Linda, the first show, and you can see the lineup. And I was just talking to pretty much anybody I could find who I thought would be an interesting person to talk to about the Baja BC thing. And I tried to get everybody. So if you know some of these names, you'll know that many of them are pro Baja BC, and a few are very, very anti Baja BC, and Joanne Nelson in particular. And this episode here, before Christmas, Brian Mahoney and Paul Link came on together. And you can see the look on my face. So it was a good episode for me. These are two people who really were very thoroughly against Baja BC and had been their whole career. And the only reason I managed to get them on camera is that Paul Link was one of my professors at Idaho State University. So Link was the professor, and I and Brian Mahoney were classmates as master's students in Idaho State at Pocatello, and that's where I met Liz. And so, look at that. So Link was particularly fired up and wanted to just basically say, how dare you do this Baja BC thing? Didn't we teach you anything in Pocatello? Like, we taught you that this stuff is junk, and now you're doing a whole series on it. What's going on, man? I thought we killed this thing. He's literally saying that in the episode. So it was uncomfortable, and Mahoney was a little less. Well, they both were very forceful, and that's no surprise. They were forceful 30 years ago when we were all together in Pocatello. They were totally into their work, but they were so anti. This was the first time that I heard somebody say, if you're talking about insular, you need to talk about the intermontane as well, as one unit. Mahoney kept saying that. So basically, this is even though it was uncomfortable for me, uncomfortable, sometimes good, and it was the first time that I thought, well, maybe there's a fault to the east of intermontane. And that was a first for me, but of course, other people, paleomagnetic people, as we'll see today, including Bob Hildebrand, who's not a paleomag guy specifically, but that was the first I was catching wind that we need to look east if we want to seriously consider major movement to the north. Okay, well, I have to include this. So this was December 10th, and Merle Beck, who's now bedridden after another fall and can't get out of bed, I guess that's what bedridden means, was watching these episodes, and I would occasionally email Merle and say, well, what do you think? How's it going? I'll share this, and then we're going to go to Hildebrand the rest of the way. It still bothers me. The plan was I was going to start the Baja BC series with Paleomag, but programmatically and getting key guests like Jane Wynn and Randy Enkin, I couldn't get them till January. So I restructured the alphabet. I'll show you that again. I restructured the alphabet so that I could get Jane and Randy in particular and then Karin and Stephen. They were busy folks, and they couldn't come on until January. And so I front-loaded the first half of the Baja BC alphabet with bedrock geology, and the Nanaimo guys, Danny and Will, were particularly strong. Everyone was strong in their own way, but I had to backload the alphabet, and to me, you may have a different opinion, but my opinion is the series really took off in January and February. And it was the Paleomag people that got us going, looking east, based on the Carmacks. The first time I'd heard about the Carmacks in Yukon and Mount Tatlow and Crow's Nest volcanics and all that other kinds of stuff. All right. So we do the Mahoney show, Mahoney and Link, and I email Merle. And I get an email a few days later. No, Christmas Eve. And it's the last email I was able to get from Merle. He passed away just a few days later. And I'm sharing it because he was feisty and funny and so original even in his last email. So after watching this Mahoney show where these guys are on fire, Merle sends me this on Christmas Eve from his bed. Nick, I do remember scraps of what I was thinking while attempting to assimilate Mahoney's ideas as they tortured my bed sores. Probably the most reprehensible was that I owed Brian an apology for having originated a concept so unorthodox that he felt compelled to squander a disproportionate amount of his life's creative juices refuting it. After all, arguing a negative rarely is much fun. Merle. So the part that bothers me is he didn't get to see all the Paleomag shows, and he didn't get to see that series take off. He didn't get to see the series, the part of the series where we were looking east and talking about the Carmacks. Oh well, just didn't happen. Thanks for listening. Rest in peace, Merle Beck, and his hand-picked successor, Bernie Housen. So there was a hand-picked successor for Ted Irving as well, and that was Randy Enkin. So Ted passed away, and Randy took over for Ted, and Randy did some important work with paleomagnetism as well. I'm telling you all of this because you're going to hear some name dropping from Hildebrand in just a second, and he's talking about some of these key players. I just thought it would be a nice touch to put some personal stamps on some of this so that you're able to keep up with Hildebrand. Nobody can keep up with Bob, but we can try a little bit with some of this backstory. That's the hope. So I got Randy on. He was excellent. His internet connection was not good at all, and so we struggled with that, but his content was tremendous. And Randy really wanted to show that this is not stuff done in a laboratory. We're out here working hard in the field and drilling cores and getting this paleomagnetic detail. And Bernie Housen came on twice, and that was right after Merle passed away. So there was one emotional show where Bernie was reflecting on Merle's life. And so on. And so we got into paleopoles, we got into all sorts of crotonic signatures. We started realizing that all these exotic terrains in the far west had paleopoles that were totally bizarre, which indicated that they must have been translated to the north and rotated clockwise. And Basil Tikoff had some paleomag experience. Stephen Johnston, same thing. Karin Siglock, mantle tomography. So this was the end of the Baja BC series. And so all these names are going to keep coming up this winter as we talk about Alaska. That's a bucket. That's a bucket. That's a bucket. Okay, Bob, we're back to you. There's probably a text from Bob Hildebrand saying, you ever going to go back to my slideshow? Yeah, here it is. Let's go.
Over the 50 years since Beck and Nosen first discovered aberrantly shallow, far-sighted paleopoles for Cretaceous rocks within the Cordillera, numerous other paleomagnetic studies were completed with more or less congruent results. But geologists could not find the faults on which to move Cordilleran fragments northward, so commonly blamed the paleomagnetic methodology. As a way around this, some researchers such as Tikoff, suggested that the missing faults were terrain boundaries and that most, if not all, of the northward migration occurred offshore. But the problem with utilizing terrain boundaries within the Cordilleran tectonic collage is that the main period of northerly migration largely postdates terrain amalgamation.
Postdates most of the terrain accretion. This is an experiment. I'm going to keep interjecting my own language and my own hokey stuff to try to translate some of what Bob is saying. And he's like, I don't need a translator. People that are bright can understand what I'm saying. Yeah, you're right, Bob, but not everybody can follow, including me half the time. So I need to do it my own way. Sorry, that's just the way I need to operate here this time. So if I go to Docky for the first time really this winter, there's a couple things that we can say. Bob is heading towards this message. And the message is that it's the Tintina that's going to do major amounts of northward translation between 70 and 50 million years ago. And that means that everything here that's older than 50 million years old was moved 1,300 kilometers, plus or minus a few hundred kilometers, I guess. And in the last show, I just casually thought that maybe Siberia was the backstop for all of this, and so we'll get Stephen Johnston's Alaskan terrain wreck. I saw in the live chat, when I finally saw the live chat replay last night, which took more than 24 hours to show up, by the way, I think Bob said casually in the live chat that he thought the Brooks Range was maybe the backstop for all this motion, but we'll leave that alone. But if you're missing the main message of today's episode, as I intended, I did this 7 minutes before we started this morning. I just randomly took different Sharpie colors indicating the fruitcake. Do you remember? We used the fruitcake as the exotic terrain bedrock. And that old North America's edge is here at John Stockton's house in Spokane, Washington. And so everything west of Stockton's house is exotic. And I'm saying fruitcake because there's so many different colors and textures inside of a holiday fruitcake. So this fruitcake bedrock is the exotic terrain stuff that has an oceanic origin, has been added to North America. Well, what were we doing for much of Baja BC A to Z? And what are many geologists still doing? They're looking for a Baja BC fault They're looking for a Baja BC fault within the fruitcake. I'm not going to name names. I'm just going to say many people have been trying to find offset within the fruitcake, and that Washington was down in British Columbia. Washington was down in Mexico, and then here it comes on this mythical Baja BC fault until we get to stuff today. And classically, that Baja BC time, you remember this from 3 winters ago, we would say Baja BC time is 85 to 55. 85 million years ago to 55 million years ago. 85 million years ago, everything's like this. And then we start moving north on a Baja BC fault. Well, today's episode and the main message of Bob Hildebrand's paper is that there might be some offset. There is some offset within the fruitcake, but that's not the main story. We need to look east. We need to look east to find a Baja BC fault. And where is he saying it is? He's saying it's the Rocky Mountain Trench. Going down to Sky Cooley's house, and then, I don't know, like that. And you're like, well, that's got to be wrong. I thought the edge of the fruitcake was here. Well, if you're Hildebrand, and maybe a few others, then you're suddenly saying, well, this is fruitcake too. These are exotic terrains also. And you're like, really? The rocks of northwestern Montana are exotic? This is the Belt Purcell. The Belt Purcell. I think we need to do one episode in this alphabet on the Belt Purcell and look at the detail to see how wild it is to think of the Belt Purcell as being exotic. Is it part of the fruitcake? But the point that Bob is making, and he just said it in his slideshow, which we're getting back to in just a second, is that Bob says, my numbers for Baja, BC, my numbers for doing major amounts of northward motion starts 70 million years ago because of the Carmax volcanics in Yukon. So we're going to start after all of the fruitcake is here, save for one part of it, which is Silesia. But we've already established that Silesia is too young for this winter, for the most part, for at least Bob's paper. The fruitcake is assembled, and then we move everything. Going right up the Rocky Mountain Trench. Everything. To Alaska. Look east to find the major Baja BC fault. The hidden Baja BC fault that's not at the surface anymore. And you're like, what? Okay, well, back to Bob. Right. Tintina, Rocky Mountain Trench. Get myself out of here.
The main period of northerly migration largely postdates terrain amalgamation, with rocks as young as the 70 million year Shoshonitic Carmax group of the Yukon Territory yielding 1950 plus or minus 600 kilometers of apparently northerly migration. As you can see here, this is mostly within error of the other Upper Cretaceous Paleocene Cordilleran bedded units with large displacements.
Okay, I'm pausing this. I'm going to try to just restart it in just a second. Let me get myself on here. This is a key. There's many key things graphically that Bob shares with us in the new paper. This is based on Randy Enkin's work primarily, I think. And it's time to have egg on my face now. I'm going to share with you what I think I understand from this diagram, but there's plenty I don't understand yet. Paleolatitudes of Cordilleran bedded successions. So he's saying this is paleomag data from layered stuff only. He's going to avoid the granites. He'll talk about that a little bit himself. But this is from all these sites have volcanic layers and sedimentary layers interbedded with each other, where you can be more confident than other places about the original horizontal nature of those layers. 100 million years ago, here's the start of Baja BC according to Hildebrandt. I should not say it that way, Bob. This is where Bob wants to start northward motion on the Rocky Mountain Trench / Tintina, and he wants things to stop at 52 plus or minus a couple million years. And so if you look at the paleomag of these things, the Kamloops magmas, the Silesia basalts, and so on, it makes sense with the former latitude. So what is this? This is expected North American paleolatitude. So North America in general is starting to drift southward, starting 65 million years ago. Somebody, I think it was Eddie, Three Dog Night, wanted to keep track of where North America was on the world map. Here's one way to do it. We're going to hear Bob's words specifically, but these things are shaped so strangely because there's error. There's always error with paleomagnetic determinations. And I'm not going to go back and talk about the basics of paleomag. Sorry. We can't go back and reinvent everything. So whatever shape this is, hourglass kind of thing, the how to say it. This is because of error. So there's error both this way and that way with each of these guys. A minimum and a maximum amount. So this is Bob. Okay, I'm realizing right now. So minimum and maximum for the amount of for positioning the Carmax lavas in Yukon with its old latitude 70 million years ago, which I guess is like latitude of 43 degrees north. It's not 43 degrees north anymore. 43 degrees north. That scene right there is 47 degrees north. So there we go. The Carmax volcanics potentially were south of Ellensburg, Washington, 70 million years ago. I think you know what I mean. The present latitude of Ellensburg. Okay, so the idea is that look at all these places: Silverquick and Powell, Nanaimo, the lower Nanaimo, the upper Nanaimo. Places up in Alaska, I guess. Lake Clark today, is that up in Alaska? McCall Ridge, I think, is in Alaska. These things were way south, according to the paleomagnetic data. But it's not all to the south. Once you get young enough, then the paleomag seems to show that this major northward motion is over. Okay, gracefully, can I get back to Bob? Gracefully. There. Play.
I only use bedded rocks for paleomagnetic analysis, as it is impossible to confidently ascertain paleohorizontal and plutonic rocks, especially because they are commonly folded or tilted. For bedded rocks in the range of 90 to 70 million years, deviations from the mean are approximately an order of magnitude lower than the overall mean translation of 2100 plus or minus 700 kilometers, documented by Randy Enkin way back in 2006. Thus, the majority of the northward migration occurred after about 70 million years, when all terrains except Silesia had already docked.
Okay, good. We're following. Okay, let's go to the Carmax. The Carmax lavas in Yukon are maybe the key place for all of this. Stephen Johnston a few winters ago said, I would never have come up with the Great Alaskan Terrain Wreck model if it had not been for the Carmax, where he personally was drilling rocks up at the Carmax in Yukon, Jane Wynn, Randy Enkin, and others. It's been studied carefully by multiple workers, and everyone in the paleomagnetic community agrees that stuff is bulletproof. That's great data. You cannot ignore the Carmax. Hildebrandt's not ignoring the Carmax for sure. This is a nice portion of his slideshow where he takes his narration and it works beautifully with his graphics, even with a little cute little zoom in thing. Bob, go for it.
As pointed out years ago by both Randy Enkin and Stephen Johnston, the northward migration must involve rocks as far east as the easternmost outcrops of the Carmax group, which collectively span the intermontane belt from the Tintina Fault westward to the Denali Fault as shown here. Note the few occurrences within a few kilometers, but I think about 7 kilometers, of the Tintina Fault.
I like that.
Northward migration ended by about 52 plus or minus 2 million years ago, as documented by several studies, which found coincident paleolatitude from rocks of the insular intermontane sector of the Cordilleran hinterland and those of Crotonic North America, as you can see here. Thus, the bulk of the dextral or northward meridional migration within the Cordillera took place between 70 and 52 million years, which, if correct, sets up a set of conflicting problems. First,
okay, so Bob's going to start going through details in his paper. Bob, warning, I'm not going to go through every point that you have in your slideshow. I'm grabbing things where your words work well with your imagery and the places that worked best for me. So you might go, come on, man, you're missing out some of the key points in the slideshow. Well, the slideshow is there for everybody to enjoy. I'm grabbing key moments that work for me personally where I am currently in understanding. And I see 2 texts are waiting, probably from Bob. We're going to go to that in 10 minutes. We're getting to the top of the hour, and we're just going to continue with this on Thursday. Let's keep going. I think this is working, personally. I don't know how you all feel. The Amanika belt, another very, very key part, which I barely understand at the moment, but I feel like we're going to be doing a lot of hot Amanika talk this winter. Go, Bob.
The Omanika Metamorphic Plutonic Belt, which largely lies west of both the Tintina Fault and the Rocky Mountain Trench, is the eastern of 2 metamorphic plutonic crystalline belts in the Canadian Cordillera, as shown here.
I love this. There's the Omanika.
The rocks in the Omanika Belt were deformed, metamorphosed, and impregnated by plutons between 124 and 105 million years, and it seems out of place in its current location, as there is no temporally comparable deformation in the Foreland Fold and Thrust Belt to the east.
Mm-hmm.
This graphical illustration of mismatched deformational ages for the Great Basin and Canadian sectors of the Cordilleran origin shows the relations. In the Great Basin area, rocks of the North American Platform Terrace were deformed and thrust eastward during the 125 to 105 million year severe event. Yet rocks to the west in the Great Basin show no evidence of this deformation. The opposite holds true for the Canadian sector, where rocks of the North American Platform Terrace have a well-developed Santonian to Eocene Laramide Fold thrust belt, but rocks to the west have severe age deformation. These and other data suggest that the arc and hinterland of the severe event are now resident in the Omanika Belt of the Canadian Cordillera.
Up here.
This mismatch is supported by the presence of the Bourgeot thrust, which has Santonian, Campanian marine shales in its footwall syncline. However, just to the west, where Paleozoic sedimentary rocks sit atop metasedimentary rocks of the Mesoproterozoic Purcell supergroup, thrusts were shown to predate 109 million years because they are cut by syn to post-kinematic plutons. These observations led me to argue that the Omanika Belt was the metamorphic plutonic hinterland of the 124 million year severe orogeny of Utah and Wyoming.
So Bob Hildebrand himself has confessed that pretty much everybody he talks to, including geologists, who seem to know a lot of stuff, he can just see their eyes glaze over. He says that. Santamanian, I don't know what that is. I need to Google that. Hinterland, I kind of forget what that is compared to Foreland. I think I know, but I'm not exactly sure. Bob has so much to offer, and each sentence is so dense. Now, in this case, he scripted it out. You can hear him turning his pages at home, writing this out. So again, Bob made this for us, and he wrote everything out so that everything's nice and tight. Wonderful. Thank you. But even talking to Bob on the phone, it's that kind of a thing. It's all dense. He's got so much. It's a fire hose. And so I'm trying my best to translate when I can. But the problem is I'm a translator who doesn't totally understand the language myself. So it's going to take us a little while. That's why we're spending 6 episodes thinking about Bob's work. I got 5 minutes left. Let's do one more clip. Bob, Blue Mountains, Belt Supergroup. Bob Blue's Belt.
Field mapping and uranium-lead dating along the Salmon River Suture of Idaho indicate that rocks of the Blue Mountain superterrane and those of the Bell Purcell Windermere package were juxtaposed prior to 110 plus or minus 5 million years,
110.
as indicated by the age of the intrusive Little Goose complex, which cuts the contact.
Little Goose complex.
Subsequent deformation interpreted as
the Little Goose complex. I don't know where that is. Does everybody agree the Little Goose complex is a stitching pluton that joins the Blue Mountains and the Belt Purcell? That seems kind of important.
Transpessional deformation within the Idaho shear zone overprints the suture and is older than 90 million years on the basis of uranium-lead ages of non-deformed granitic pegmatites that cut the fabric. Robust paleomagnetic data collected by Bernie Hausen from the Blue Mountains terrain indicates 1760 plus or minus 460 kilometers of northerly movement after about 90 million years, which must also apply to rocks of the Belt-Purcell-Windermere block, as they were united as one block at that time. Thus, rocks along the western side of both the northern and southern sectors of the Rocky Mountain Trench exhibit large paleomagnetic translations.
Okay, that is big. That is big. I think we need a letter. I'm not sure it's the next letter, but I think we need a letter looking at the Belt-Purcell, the famous metasedimentary rocks of northwestern Montana. Is everybody except Bob saying that truly is passive margin stuff on old North America? That's what I've thought up until recently. That's what I was taught. That's what I was teaching with exotic terrain aid. Remember, we had Kettle Falls, Washington at the western edge of the old North America. But if we're looking east and we're projecting the Rocky Mountain Trench to the south, suddenly the belt has to be exotic. And not only exotic, it needs to be tied to the belt, the Belt-Purcell needs to be tied to the blues, and the blues have been moved north a fair amount. I got one more. Let's squeeze one more in. This will be a good way to finish today. We're right back to where we started. The Tintina, the Rocky Mountain Trench, it goes right into the Belt-Purcell. Montana's here, Sky Cooley's house, southeastern British Columbia. And somebody's comment in the live chat was a good one, or maybe it was a comment left down below in episode A. They're like, there is Rocky Mountain. The Alberta Rockies are to the east of the trench, so why are you saying the Alberta Rockies used to be down in Nevada? I think there's an explanation, unless I'm way off. We're finished with this last clip from Sir Bob S. Hildebrand.
As the physiographic Rocky Mountain Trench extends continuously for about 1,600 kilometers from Flathead Lake, Montana, to the Laird Lowlands, and then continues north-northwestward an additional 1,000 kilometers into Alaska as the Tintina Trench, it is hard to fathom how such a long, linear, and narrow valley could be anything but the locus of a significant strike-slip fault, despite significant evidence for local late normal faulting, especially in the southern sector.
Okay, Bob. I think there's, we'll finish here.
Despite a decades-long intense search by geologists, no other fault, collection of faults, splay, or branch of the Tintina Fault itself has been discovered along which more than 1,000 kilometers of dextral slip might have been transferred. It is difficult to understand how any of the preceding observations can be incorrect, yet no plausible solution has been presented, even though the conundrum has been widely recognized for decades. Next, I propose a testable solution for the problem, and then explore some of its tectonic implications. Although I examined the problem about a decade ago, because I believed what everybody told me about the geology, I was unable to locate the fault along which the northerly migration might have taken place. However, a couple of years ago, as I was compiling data for our paper on the collisional foredeep to the 100 million year Peninsula Ranges orogeny, I was once again drawn to the discontinuities and truncations of several geological features, such as the cutoff of isopachs within the Shaftesbury Formation.
Okay, more trinkets. But we've got our buckets. We got a couple major buckets, and we know what to do with this now. At least I think I know what to do with it. We're cutting it here. We're going to continue with Bob's slideshow and involve more from Bob, because there's a part 2 coming at some point. Another slideshow coming from Bob, unless we've pissed him off somehow this morning. So I'm getting out of that. Thank you. We're to the top of the hour. It's 9 o'clock. And to remind you, I want these to be one solid hour of geology. And that was my way of presenting some geology this morning, with always some personal stuff thrown in, some backstory and some personalities and everything else. I've got 4 texts now waiting for me. So We're going to do some live Q&A. We're going to talk about the schedule and a few other things before we sign off today, so another 15 minutes or so. But this is the new format. Keep it to an hour. So, reading text from Bob, I guess is geology, but we'll consider it the after party, okay? Why can't I? Okay, so I'm just going to open up text on the second monitor. I don't care. If it's from my girlfriend in Tasmania, then fine, okay? Let's just do it. So thank you, Bob. We will continue with you next time. And I remind you that nickzentner.com looks like this. By the way, a number of people have said, this isn't Alaska. Wherever you got that photo, it's not Alaska. If that's true, we have some photographers who have some classic shots of Alaska. Would you mind emailing me a few high-quality photos? Just a generic shot from some mountain range in Alaska. I'll replace this photo if that's true. That's how much I know about Alaska. Sorry. But remember now, viewers, if you want to read Bob's paper carefully, and that was too disjointed for you this morning, here is the paper in all of its glory, including one of these figures that we looked at very carefully this morning. This one we keep going to as well. The Almanique's in there, and so on. This is not the last time we're talking about this paper, but I have added this as well. This is not necessarily specifically for today, but this is a book, and you've got the entire book, and it's from 2013. And also at breakfast, Bijou and I were reading this with scrambled eggs, and I'm like, holy shit, man, we've got a section on Alaska, which I guess I didn't realize or had forgotten. There's a whole segment. This is probably a roadmap for us. A good 10 minutes, 10 pages of pure Bob. And again, if you want to see the slideshow that we've been sampling, if you go to the Alaska Video Library, here it is, 35 straight minutes instead of me popping in and out. Okay. This will be a fun experiment. Let's try. Reaction from Bob Hildebrand. Yep. There's Nat, the Wonder Boy, helping me with detail about cameras and everything. Okay. This is from Bob Hildebrand this morning. Same thing as Merle happened to Enkin as well. The Cordilleran geos are really close-minded. So I'm not saying that the belt Purcell is exotic, but I'm saying it's certainly allochthonous in large thrust sheets. Interesting, Bob. What's the difference? Allochthonous and exotic. I kind of want to go to, okay, I think this kind of works. Little morsels from Bob. Before we go to your questions, little morsels from the author. In September, I was interviewing people in Tasmania and Australia about their Rocky Cape group being the same exact stuff as our belt Purcell. And I got all excited because I thought maybe it's somebody else, maybe the belt Purcell is rock from a different continent and then got thrust up onto our continent. But I think Bob is trying to talk me off of that. He did by email as well. He said, stop doing that. I'm not saying the belt Purcell is exotic, but I'm saying that it's certainly allochthonous in large thrust sheets. We haven't gotten to the thrust sheet discussion. That's how we're going to start next time. Yes, I think most geologists would agree that the Little Goose Complex does cut the contact between the Blue Mountains and the belt Purcell. Okay, that's naturally where I think we need to go next time. The belt is Mesoproterozoic, so can't be part of any passive margin which starts in the Cambrian. Okay, so yeah, I think that's naturally where we're going. I think I decided right now. I might talk myself out of it, but I think if you want to tune in next Thursday at 3 p.m. Pacific time, we will do something with the two generations of thrust faults that are in the Rocky Mountains. some older than 70 million years old and some younger than 70 million years old, which helps explain why we can't see this Baja BC fault. They're concealed, they're hidden. They're hiding under sheets of plywood. And then I think that's also the stuff that's moving then. The sheets of plywood are the belt. So I don't think I want to call it the Amanica belt anymore because I think that's confusing. I think the CPC, the Coast Plutonic Complex in British Columbia, the CPC, and I think I'm going to try to use OPC, the Omanica Plutonic Complex. Probably nobody does that, and it's maybe confusing in its own way. But that word belt I want to reserve for these Precambrian metasedimentary rocks that are a key part of what's moving north, and even more importantly, what has been shoved east on thrust faults to bury this hidden Baja BC fault. Thank you, Bob. Oh, Lochfinus means not in place. Exotic means not part of North America. Okay, I think I did figure that out on my own, but I appreciate the clarification. Very good. It's 9:07. Can we do 10 minutes of live question and answer before we sign off here today? It seems like we're functional. Thank you, Nat the Wonder Boy. Uppercase, please. If you've already typed in your question, would you mind doing it again? I'm down here live. Just copy and paste that thing down below. Patrick, if the fault for Baja BC is in the Rockies, why is the accepted strontium 706 line in central Nevada? Thank you, Patrick. I don't know, but I think Bob currently is working on a new paper, he can correct me, on the strontium 706 line. He's probably saying that was a good start a generation ago, but are we sure the strontium 706 line is really the way to make sure that we're at the edge of old North America? Jim, do the Baja BC transform faults overprint a Proterozoic faulting story related to Rodinia or earlier supercontinents? Jim, thanks, from Lake Koshkanon. I think I need to decide how much of the Rodinia and rifting story fits into what we're doing here. As much as I love this Bob Hildebrand stuff, I want to make sure we're not too distracted. Basically, I want whatever we do in these letters, I want them to pay off for understanding Alaska. And if we're suddenly in Tasmania, I'm not sure it's going to be helpful to us. John Nash, Spreading Ridge John. Of course he's talking about the Basin Range. Should the Basin Range extension be reversed in order to accurately analyze the Cordilleran orientation, and thus what extended basement terrain under the flood basalts? Could the parts of the fault be there? I think everybody who's thinking about 70 to 50 is careful to restore the Basin Range extension, John. And therefore, the Sierra Nevada, which is a major thorn in everybody's side when thinking about this, is much further to the east. I'm not sure I follow the rest of your question. Sorry, John. David, the Tintina Rocky Mountain Trench are fairly straight, but does bend a little. Would they have been bent while active, or have they been bent distorted by later events? Thanks, David. I'm going to table that one. Trevor Waldine is on the horn. He definitely wants to be part of this. He was here in Ellensburg. He's the guy that works on the Denali Fault a fair amount and has been thinking about the Alaska orocline a lot and has a brand new paper in GSA Today, which we will probably do a Zoom interview on. Terrible grammar. So the bending of things is an important part of this, David. We'll get to Trevor and see what he has to say. Or maybe he'll watch this now and email me something. Matena. Wasn't the edge of North America transformed, not a straight line, had parts sticking out like where the Blue Mountains got stuck? That's a good memory. You're thinking about those promontories, a la Basil Tikoff in the Hit and Run paper. Does Does everyone agree those promontories, that jagged edge of the Precambrian margin, A, does everybody agree that's a thing? B, does everybody see that as a help or a hurt to what Bob is saying? Gary Selezia bucket is too young. This is we are pre-Selezia most of the winter, I think, except for when we talk about the Yakutat and get Aaron Donaghy on here. Thank you. Pat Miller, are there examples of this amount of offset, 1,300 kilometers, in other locations? Or is this unique to the study area? Pat from Yakima, are you talking about other places in the world? I don't know the answer, but there has been paleomeg done around the world, and interestingly, it doesn't seem to be that controversial. But here in the American West, it continues. It's less controversial than it was, and Merle's not around to see that, but it's still a sticking point, and I don't think the 1,300 kilometers is a deal breaker. Remember, some of these original papers by Merle and others were talking about almost 3,000 kilometers of offset. Chris, hasn't it always been a series of group of faults that are collective Baja BC faults? Well, yeah, I mean, we were heading 3 winters ago, we were heading to a series of faults collectively doing major amounts of offset. And Bob's kind of going retro in a way, saying we do have one major fault doing the lion's share of the northward motion, sending it to the north. Remember, make it, dock it, slice it, send it. We're talking about the send it north. But, I mean, so the Tintina is younger than the Denali is younger than the Tintina? Okay, new thought right there. What was Trevor talking about? He was talking about Eocene offset on the Denali. That's younger than 50. A lot to think about. But I got the buckets. The buckets excite me. The trinkets don't. Are there 3 examples of this mountain? Okay, Pat. Could the Rocky Mountain Trench be a fault in the craton created by exotic terrain impact? In the craton. Is Bob Hildebrand saying that the Rocky Mountain Trench is a boundary between the craton and fruitcake? Or is it in the craton, or is it in the fruitcake? I guess I'm not clear. I should be, but maybe I'm not. That's an interesting question. Herman, what force made the fruitcake slide north? Is there a conveyor belt deep down? Good question. I think most view oblique subduction, where we don't have head-on. Remember in Baja BC alphabet we were talking about accordion and symbols? I think the fact that we have ocean plates hitting us obliquely as opposed to head-on is the driver for that, but that could be an assumption that's off base. Jim, contrast or compare pizza boxes and plywood. I said plywood, but I guess I could use pizza boxes. They're just big-ass pizza boxes, that's all. Sorry, Patrick. Does this put in question the strontium? Yeah, I think the strontium 706 line, we might get a whole nother slideshow from Bob on the strontium 706. He's like, bullshit, I already did one for you. I'm barely going to do the next one. Chris, what and where is the backstop of Alaska Craton into where all these terrains imports have accumulated? Excellent question. Don't know. I think we're heading there. Ron, I think, asked this last time. He's asking again. How do the Klamaths fit into this? Are the Klamaths the same as the Blues? I think that data is there. I don't have it in my head currently. Very good. Okay. It's 1:15. Nathan Hildebrand. Nathan? Welcome. Are you Bob Hildebrand now disguised as Nathan Hildebrand? Clever. Or are you a family member? Thank you for your question. Is there a glacial bucket in this? Like, obviously the Rocky Mountain Trench got carved out because it's the fault. going back 2 winters where we were talking about subglacial flow underneath the Cordilleran ice sheet, Jerome Lessman kept saying, we've got these major valleys crossing into the States from Canada, and those trenches, the Okanagan Trench, the Rocky Mountain Trench, a couple others I can't think of, I said, they're kind of like gutters then. They're just bringing all this water under the ice sheet. He's like, yeah, that's why you've got all this ice age flooding in eastern Washington. So there is a tie for sure that those major trenches are important with the Pleistocene, but of course that's way too young for this winter. But yeah, it's an interesting tie between the Brett's discussions and this discussion. 3 more and we're done today. Regine from France. That's French. Could the Rocky Mountain Trench be an ancient cratonic fault being reactivated 70 million years ago? Possible, but I think I need to revisit that. Bob, where do you put the edge of the craton then? Is that important? And if it's not the 706 line, do you have a new way to locate the edge of the craton? And if you do, is it right there at the Rocky Mountain Trench? Is it harder to buy a Baja BC fault at the Rocky Mountain Trench if it's cutting craton? Because craton is just so old and thick and hard. Seems like that's a reasonable question. Okay, I think that's enough. A toast to you. Here's to you for joining us on a Saturday morning. More than 700 live viewers. Thank you. It's especially meaningful because I really haven't publicized that we've started this thing. So whether you're just a YouTube viewer in general and you saw notifications or you saw the Sicily, Alaska thing I did or whatever, but it takes, people have a lot going on. So I'm sure there's tons of people who are like, oh yeah, has he started that thing yet? Yeah, we have. We got 2 in the can. So here's to you for being on the ball and being with us live or in replay this early in the alphabet. Here's to your health, your physical and your mental health. I'm 63. I'm feeling good. I hope that you are too. I think when I'm 93 and I look back when I'm 63, I'm like, wow, I would trade places in a heartbeat. I could actually walk across campus instead of being wheeled across campus. So I feel old, but at the same time, compared to that, I'm doing pretty well. Thank you. Here's to your health. Okay. We're done today. It's a beautiful day. I'm going to go out and enjoy it. Liz is having a big party tonight with all of her book club gals, so I need to either hide in the basement or find something else to do. I'll probably find something else to do. I'm not invited to the party, but things are going very well with Liz. Many of you continue to ask about her well-being, and she's 100%. She's perfect. And we are coming up on the 1-year anniversary of our major health scare with my wife, Liz. So we will celebrate this Thursday. After I'm done with you, we will celebrate next Thursday. That will be a year when she had the major problem. So thank you all so much. Please enjoy the day and your weekend, and I will see you on Thursday. I should have this looked up. I don't. I will see you next on Thursday, November 13th, 2025, at 3 p.m. Pacific Time, for those that wish to join us live. Thank you. I love you. And we'll see you Thursday. Goodbye.